What would you do if you came home from serving your country overseas, only to find strangers living in your house because your HOA sold it without your permission? Quentin Ralston had been gone for 11 long months, months filled with dust, sand, and orders shouted across distant battlefields. When his plane landed at Dallas-Fort Worth, he finally exhaled, feeling the weight lift off his chest. Home. Finally, home. He had imagined this moment over and over, the drive west toward Weatherford, his ranch resting beneath the wide Texas sky, his father's old porch swing, the oak tree he used to climb as a boy, and the barn that always smelled faintly of hay. But when his truck rolled into the driveway that afternoon, something froze him in place. A minivan sat where his Chevy should have been. Children's bikes leaned against the fence. Through the window of his own ranch house, the home he grew up in, he saw curtains he didn't recognize and toys scattered on the floor. For a moment, he thought he had the wrong address, but he hadn't. Every inch of that land was carved into his memory. This was his home, his family's home, yet strangers were living inside it. He killed the engine and stepped out, his boots crunching against the gravel. A woman opened the front door, a toddler on her hip, her face tightening with confusion and fear. "Can I help you?" she asked. Quentin straightened, still in uniform, his duffel bag over his shoulder. "This is my house," he said firmly.
"Who are you?"
The woman's hold on her child tightened. "I think you're mistaken. We bought this place 6 months ago, from the HOA." The words hit him like a blow. The HOA. Quentin had paid every bill before deployment, mortgage up to date, taxes cleared, everything in order. He had done everything right, and yet here he was, staring at a stranger standing in his living room. "I'm not mistaken," he said quietly. "My name is Quentin Ralston. This property has been in my family for 3 generations. I didn't sell it, and I didn't give anyone permission to." The woman shifted uneasily. "We have the paperwork," she said. "If you've got a problem, take it up with the HOA." Quentin felt a slow burn in his chest. He'd faced armed men overseas, but nothing prepared him for this kind of theft. He turned back to his truck, anger and disbelief battling inside him. The HOA. That meant one person, Sylvia Brenner. She'd been president of the association for years, notorious for her cold tone and iron grip on the neighborhood. She'd once fined him for leaving his truck parked overnight. His father used to say Sylvia ran the subdivision like her personal kingdom. Now, it seemed she had gone too far. Driving away, Quentin's thoughts drifted to his father, teaching him to mend fences, break horses, and respect the land. "It's the one thing they can't make more of," his father used to say. The man had fought through hard winters and recessions to keep that ranch. And now, while Quentin was serving his country, someone had taken it away with the stroke of a pen. He pulled into a gas station, sat for a long moment staring at the steering wheel, then called an old friend, Luis Navarro, a sheriff's deputy who'd grown up nearby. "Ralston, you back?" Luis said, surprised. "Yeah," Quentin replied. "But apparently I don't have a house anymore." Luis went silent for a moment. "What are you talking about?" "The HOA sold my ranch. There's a family living in it. They said they bought it from Brenner." Luis swore under his breath. "Don't confront anyone, not yet. Bring me your paperwork. We'll sort it out." "You don't want to get arrested your first day home." Quentin managed a humorless laugh. "I just want my home back." Luis sighed. "If Brenner did this, she's done it before. Sit tight, we'll figure this out." Quentin hung up, his determination hardening. They took his home, but they hadn't counted on him coming back to fight. The next morning, Quentin walked into the HOA office in Weatherford, a squat brick building tucked between a dental clinic and a feed store. He still wore his uniform, partly because he hadn't changed and partly because he wanted Sylvia to see it. The place smelled of burnt coffee and old carpet. The receptionist barely looked up when he said, "I need to see Sylvia Brenner." "She's in a meeting," the woman replied without looking away from her screen. "Tell her Staff Sergeant Quentin Ralston is here about the ranch she sold out from under me." The receptionist froze, then hurried down the hall. Moments later, Sylvia appeared, silver hair pulled tight, sharp suit, glasses perched low on her nose. "Well," she said coolly, "I wondered when you'd be back." "You sold my ranch," Quentin said. "Correction," she replied. her lips curling into a thin smile. The HOA sold it after you failed to pay dues and ignored violations. You abandoned the property, Sergeant. The board had no choice. Quentin stepped forward. I didn't abandon anything. I was deployed. Federal law protects service members from this exact thing, and I paid every cent before I left. That's not what our records show, Sylvia said calmly. Then you forged them, Quentin snapped. Sylvia raised a hand. Calm yourself. Maybe speak to your lawyers instead of harassing me. Quentin's jaw tightened. Don't worry, I will. He turned and walked out, the sound of his boots echoing on the tile. Later that day, Quentin met Luis at the sheriff's office. Luis handed him a stack of papers. You were right, he said. There's a transfer filed with the county, signed off by the HOA, but your signature isn't anywhere on it. They pushed it through as a lien foreclosure. Unpaid dues, violations, all inflated. Quentin's fist hit the table. So they stole it, Luis nodded. Pretty much. And you're not the first. There have been complaints about Brenner's board for years, but nothing ever stuck. Quentin leaned back. Not this time. Luis looked him in the eye. You need to go through JAG. You're covered under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. Push this right, and you'll not only get your ranch back, you'll expose the whole scheme. Quentin nodded. That night he sat at his sister Emma's kitchen table. She was 5 years older, tough as nails and furious. They sold Daddy's land, she said, slamming her spoon down, over my dead body. Quentin laid out the receipts and letters he'd saved. Once Jag gets involved, Sylvia's empire will crumble. Emma's eyes burned. Good. I want to see her carry her boxes out. They both laughed, tired but certain, but word was already spreading. Other families had lost their homes in the same way. And soon, the scandal would erupt far beyond Quentin's ranch. 2 days later, he met Captain Renee Whitfield at Fort Cavazos. She flipped through his papers, nodding. You've got everything. The Service Members Civil Relief Act exists for exactly this reason. Quentin leaned forward. I don't just want it fixed. I want accountability. Whitfield nodded. Then we'll find the pattern and expose it. That night, Quentin lay awake in a motel room off I-20, staring at the ceiling fan. The image of that woman holding her child in his house replaying in his head. He didn't blame her, she was just a pawn. But it only fueled his resolve. The next morning, Luis called again. You won't believe this, he said. 3 more complaints just came in. Same story. Fake dues, sudden foreclosure, house gone overnight. Quentin gripped the phone tightly. Give me their names, he said. This isn't a mistake anymore. It's a pattern. And Quentin Ralston was done letting anyone take what his family had built. Franklin Ortega on Mesquite Drive and the Holbrooks on Ridgeway had both lost their homes within the past year. You want to talk to them? Luis asked. I do, Quentin replied. Set it up. That afternoon, Quentin met Franklin Ortega at a small diner in town. Franklin was in his 50s, with grease-stained hands and tired eyes that spoke of years under the hood of cars. He cradled his coffee like it was the only thing keeping him awake. They said I owed $10,000 in dues, Franklin muttered. 10 grand. I've lived in that house 20 years, never missed a payment. But they said I was late, fees piled up, interest, penalties. I couldn't keep up. One day there's a notice on the door, and 2 months later, gone. Sold to who? Quentin asked. Franklin shook his head. Some couple from Dallas, paid cash. Real quiet, real fast. Like it was all set up ahead of time. Quentin felt his stomach twist. It was too clean, too practiced to be coincidence. That evening, he met the Holbrooks in their cramped apartment on the edge of town. Both were retired teachers, worn down and weary. They told us the same thing, Mrs. Holbrook said softly. Said we violated lawn rules, owed for repairs we never asked for. Next thing we know, we're standing before a judge who says the HOA can foreclose. We didn't even understand what was happening until it was over. Her husband's hands shook as he added, We thought it was our fault, that maybe we'd done something wrong. Quentin shook his head. It wasn't you, it's them. And I promise you, it's all going to come out. The Holbrooks looked at him with tired, doubtful eyes. But somewhere in there, A spark of hope returned. Later that night, Quentin sat in his truck, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Sylvia wasn't just ruthless, she was running a racket. She and her board had built a machine that crushed people's lives and somehow convinced the courts to look away. But now, with the army involved, that machine had a wrench in its gears. He pulled out his phone and texted Luis. "This isn't just my fight anymore. It's everyone's. We're going after them." Luis replied almost instantly. "Then buckle up, brother. Once you start this, there's no turning back." But Sylvia Brenner already felt the heat closing in. She wasn't the type to panic, but she'd led that HOA board for nearly 20 years and built a reputation for being untouchable. Still, the name Ralston carried weight in Weatherford. Quentin's father had been respected, and now his son was stirring up trouble. Inside her polished brick home, Sylvia called an emergency board meeting. 4 members gathered around her dining table, papers and ledgers stacked high. "We have a problem," she said coolly. "Staff Sergeant Ralston is back. He's been in touch with law enforcement and the JAG office." Curtis Doyle, a thin man with nervous hands, shifted in his chair. "Can't we just return the property? Call it a mistake?" Sylvia's glare froze him. "A mistake? If we reverse one, they all collapse. You want to tell a dozen families? Their deeds are worthless? You want lawsuits crawling over us?" Silence fell. Cheryl Masters spoke next. "Then what's the plan?" Sylvia folded her hands. "We tighten ranks. Every document is in order, every sale filed properly. If they accuse us of fraud, we show the records. As long as we stay united, they can't touch us." Curtis muttered, "Unless someone talks." Sylvia's eyes narrowed. No one talks. Meanwhile, Quentin wasn't sitting idle. Captain Renee Whitfield had already filed motions to halt HOA foreclosures pending investigation. "The Army's involvement will carry weight," she told Quentin. "But it's not just about law, it's about numbers. The more families step forward, the harder it'll be for them to dismiss you." Luis called one evening. "You kicked a hornet's nest," he said. "People are coming out of the woodwork. 6 new names. Folks who say they got bullied out of their homes, some too scared to talk publicly, but they'll talk to you." "Scared of what?" Quentin asked. "Of Brenner," Luis said quietly. "She's got pull. People say she threatened them with liens, fines, even lawsuits. One guy's truck got vandalized after he spoke up." Quentin's jaw clenched. "Then we give them a reason not to be afraid." The next day, he met Franklin again, this time joined by 2 other displaced homeowners in the diner's back room. The air was thick with the smell of coffee and fryer oil. "They can't keep getting away with it," Franklin said. "People need to see someone stand up to them." "They will," Quentin said. "The Army's involved now. This isn't a neighborhood spat, it's federal. If you're willing to give statements, you'll have protection." A woman named Patrice Nolan wrung her hands. "I'm scared, Quentin. My husband's sick. We can't handle more stress." "I get it," he said softly. "But think about what they took from you. Think about the next family they'll do this to. If we speak up together, they can't silence us all." Patrice hesitated, then nodded. "All right, I'll talk." That night, Quentin parked near his old ranch and stared at the distant porch light glowing through the trees. The family living there had no idea what kind of storm they were sitting in. They weren't villains. They were victims, too. Still, the sight of his father's porch swing on someone else's home made his chest ache. Across town, Sylvia received a call from her contact at the county office. "The Army filed an injunction today," the voice warned. Sylvia's lips thinned. "Let them come. They won't find what they're looking for." But for the first time in years, her hand trembled as she poured her wine. She had always believed she could outmaneuver anyone, but she hadn't counted on a soldier coming home angry, with the law on his side. As Quentin gathered more allies, Sylvia began plotting her counterattack. and the next move she was planning would drag the entire neighborhood into chaos. By the time Quentin sat at that long oak table in the Parker County Courthouse, surrounded by displaced homeowners, the fight had already grown far beyond him. Captain Whitfield addressed the room. "We're here to document every incident. The more consistent your stories, the stronger our case." One by one they spoke. Franklin, Patrice, the Holbrooks. Each story echoed the next. Inflated dues, false violations, surprise foreclosures. When it was Quentin's turn, he spoke quietly but firmly. "I was serving overseas when my ranch was taken. I paid everything before I left. They said I abandoned my property. They lied. And while I was defending my country, they stole my home." The room fell silent. Even those who'd already spoken sat still, their eyes fixed on him. It wasn't just about homes anymore. It was about dignity. Outside the courthouse, Luis caught up to him. "You're becoming the face of this thing," he said. "I didn't ask for that." "You didn't have to," Luis replied. "It's yours now." Across town, Sylvia's board was unraveling. Curtis slammed a folder down. "This is out of control. Too many eyes on us." "Calm down," Sylvia snapped. "The courts have upheld us before. They'll do it again." Curtis's voice shook. "I'm not going down with this." Sylvia's tone turned cold. "Anyone who thinks about talking should remember. They signed the same papers we all did." Curtis went pale. He knew exactly what she meant. Back at the courthouse, Captain Whitfield closed her file. "We have enough to move forward. We'll file a federal complaint to freeze all HOA actions until a judge reviews the case." Quentin felt relief, briefly. As he left the courthouse, a man in a ball cap approached him quietly. "You'd better back off, soldier. People are getting nervous. Nervous people do desperate things." "Is that supposed to scare me?" Quentin asked. "It's supposed to warn you." The man walked away, leaving Quentin standing in the Texas heat, anger and resolve burning together in his chest. This wasn't just about law anymore, it was about power. Sylvia was pulling strings, and some of those strings were tied to dangerous people. That night, Emma found him pacing on her porch. "What happened?" "Someone tried to warn me off," he said. "And?" "I'm not backing down," Quentin said, his voice steady. "They took Dad's land. They preyed on families who couldn't fight back. If they think I'll scare easy, they picked the wrong man." Emma crossed her arms, her eyes softening. "Then you'd better be ready. People like Sylvia don't fight fair." Quentin looked out over the dark fields, fireflies flickering in the distance. He could feel the weight of what was coming, but under it was steel. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for every family wronged by that board, for every soldier who deserved to come home to the life they left behind. But while Quentin prepared for the storm ahead, Sylvia was already setting her sights on the courtroom, ready to use every weapon at her disposal, no matter the cost. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, shoving microphones toward Quentin as questions flew. "Staff Sergeant, how does it feel to finally face Mrs. Brenner in court? Do you believe you'll get your ranch back? Do you think the HOA committed fraud on a larger scale?" Quentin paused at the top of the stairs. He wasn't a man who sought the spotlight, but this fight wasn't about him anymore. "This isn't just my battle," he said firmly. "It's about every family that's been pushed around by people who thought they were too small to matter. We're going to see this through." Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. Somewhere in the crowd, Sylvia Brenner watched with narrowed eyes and pressed lips. What Quentin didn't yet realize was that Sylvia had allies, powerful ones with money and influence, who weren't about to let her empire crumble without a fight. The week after the injunction passed in a blur. Calls poured in from papers across Texas, and even national outlets wanted his story. Soldiers reached out through social media, veterans groups voiced support, and neighbors he barely knew stopped by to shake his hand. But with every new show of solidarity, the weight on his shoulders grew heavier. One evening, Quentin sat on Emma's porch, his phone buzzing nonstop. She set 2 mugs of coffee beside him and sighed. "You're becoming the face of this whole thing," she said. I never wanted that, Quentin admitted, staring into the yard. I just wanted my ranch back. Doesn't matter, Emma said softly. People see you standing up to Brenner. They're rallying behind you. You can't turn away now. I know, he said quietly, but it feels like the more people I represent, the more I've got to lose if this goes wrong. That's exactly why, she replied. You can't let it go wrong. While Quentin wrestled with the pressure, Sylvia Brenner wasn't idle. She knew momentum had shifted against her and that the Rolston name was now splashed across every headline. But she still had friends in high places, deep pockets, and a network of county officials who'd long benefited from her control. Late one night, she sat in her study with her attorney, Mark Talbot. The air smelled of oak polish and old money. This soldier's making you into a villain, Talbot said, tapping a newspaper. If this keeps up, public opinion could sway the courts. Then shift the narrative, Sylvia snapped. Make him look unstable, a hothead fresh back from war. People will believe it. That's risky, Talbot warned. Everything's risky, she hissed. But perception wins cases as much as facts. Within days, whispers began spreading online. Anonymous posts questioned Quentin's mental state. A blog accused him of violent behavior. Local gossip painted him as volatile and hard to reason with. At first, Quentin ignored it, until an old acquaintance asked if he was doing okay after everything overseas. That's when he knew the smear campaign was working. He stormed into Luis Navarro's office, slamming the door. They're trying to paint me as unhinged, he said through clenched teeth. They're dragging my service through the mud. Luis leaned back. That's Brenner's playbook. If she can't beat you with rules, she'll beat you with rumors. Don't take the bait. I want to fight back. Then don't give her ammunition, Luis said. Stay calm. Let Whitfield handle it. That night, Captain Renee Whitfield called. I heard about the rumors, she said. Ignore them. We're filing for discovery next week. If Brenner's been manipulating finances, we'll find it. That's how we win, through proof, not gossip. Quentin nodded to himself. Proof. That's all I need. Days later, Whitfield slid a folder across her desk. Her expression was calm, but her eyes gleamed. We got discovery, she said. And Brenner's board handed over more than they realized. Inside were spreadsheets, payment records, and scanned letters. At first glance, they looked ordinary, until Whitfield pointed to a column of numbers. Look here, she said. They logged late fees on accounts already marked as paid. Ortega's payment cleared on the 10th, but they added a penalty 5 days later. Quentin's pulse quickened. They manufactured debt, exactly. And if this pattern holds across other families, it's fraud. That evening, Quentin met Luis at the diner where it all began. He spread the folder across the table. Luis whistled. Well, I'll be damned. They cooked the books. Quentin leaned back. Good. Let it burn. Meanwhile, Sylvia studied the same spreadsheets with a growing knot in her stomach. This doesn't look good, Talbot muttered. It's paperwork, she said sharply. No jury will sift through it. Don't fool yourself, Talbot warned. If they break it down, it's fraud. And if that happens, you're not just losing the case. You're facing charges. Sylvia set her pen down, her hand trembling. Then we bury it. Curtis Doyle handled the finances. Let him take the fall. But Curtis Doyle had already decided otherwise. That night, he called Luis Navarro anonymously. I can't do this anymore, he said. Brenner told me to sign things I knew were wrong. Fake late fees, inflated penalties. I thought it was legal, but it wasn't. If you protect me, I'll testify. Luis sat up straight. You're sure? I've got emails and memos, Curtis said. She knew exactly what she was doing. The next day, Curtis sat across from Quentin and Captain Whitfield, hands shaking as he slid over a thumb drive. This has everything, he said quietly. Emails, internal notes. Proof she ordered it all. Brenner's instructions were clear. Target the vulnerable. She told us to go after homeowners who were deployed, elderly couples, or families drowning in medical bills. Said they were easy to push. Quentin's stomach turned at those words. Easy to push, that's how she saw people like him. Curtis nodded, shame in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I was part of it. Thought it was just business. But it's not, it's theft. Captain Whitfield slipped the drive into her pocket. Mr. Doyle, she said, If you're willing to testify, this case just became much stronger. As word spread that a board member had flipped, Sylvia felt the ground shift beneath her feet. At the next HOA meeting, she tried to project confidence, but the whispers in the crowd had changed, sharper now, filled with suspicion. People murmured about missing money, shady sales, and the board's sudden silence. One homeowner stood and shouted, "Where's our money, Sylvia? Where's the transparency?" For the first time, Sylvia's polished composure cracked. She slammed the gavel, demanding order, but the room no longer obeyed her. That night, she sat alone in her study, staring at the ledger books. For years, she'd ruled the neighborhood like her own kingdom, believing no one could touch her. But Quentin Ralston had returned, and with him came the one thing she had never prepared for: truth backed by proof. But the fight wasn't over. As the case grew, it caught the attention of federal investigators. Soon it wasn't just a county matter, it was national. By midsummer, agents from the Department of Justice arrived with subpoenas and quiet authority that made even lawyers nervous. They weren't only investigating Sylvia Brenner anymore, they were combing through years of HOA records, bank accounts, and shady property transfers spanning multiple counties. One morning, Quentin stood outside the courthouse as unmarked SUVs rolled in. Louise joined him, shaking his head. "Never thought I'd see the day," he said. "The feds right here in Weatherford digging through HOA books." "She brought it on herself," Quentin replied. They all did. Inside, investigators spread across offices, gathering files. Curtis Doyle, now under protection, walked them through everything: fake fees, inflated violations, forged liens. It was all laid bare. A tall agent told Quentin, "We've identified at least a dozen families who lost their homes under suspicious circumstances. Some were resold to developers below market value, then flipped for profit. This isn't just HOA abuse, it's fraud, conspiracy, maybe even racketeering." Quentin felt both vindicated and sick. The truth was coming out, but so was the pain it had caused. That evening he returned to Emma's house. She met him at the door, arms crossed. "You look like you've carried the weight of 10 men. "Feels like it," Quentin said. "Every time we dig deeper, it's worse. She wasn't just after me, she built an empire on stolen homes." Emma shook her head. "Daddy always said land shows you who people really are. Some guard it, some exploit it." Quentin gave a tired smile. "Guess we're seeing which one Sylvia is." Across town, Sylvia sat at her dining table, her empire collapsing. She'd called a meeting with her lawyer, Mark Tolbert, and the only board member still loyal, Cheryl Masters. Tolbert didn't waste time. "The DOJ is circling. They're not just looking at civil violations anymore. If they press charges, you could be facing prison." "Prison?" Sylvia scoffed. "For enforcing HOA bylaws?" "Don't play dumb," Tolbert snapped. Curtis flipped. "They've got your emails, your memos, your fingerprints are on everything. The only question is how hard they'll come after you." Cheryl shifted nervously. "Maybe we should cooperate. Cut a deal." Sylvia's glare was ice. "You think I'll sit in a cell while that soldier prances around on TV like a hero? Never. I built this neighborhood, made it desirable. Those people should be thanking me." Her voice trembled, and for the first time, Cheryl saw the desperation behind the arrogance. Meanwhile, Quentin got a call from Captain Whitfield. "The investigators want you to testify in Washington," she said. "Your case is becoming the centerpiece of a national inquiry into HOA abuse. It could set a precedent." "Washington?" Quentin muttered. "I didn't sign up to be a symbol." "You didn't," Whitfield replied softly. "But you became one. And symbols matter." He sat in silence after the call, thinking of the Holbrooks crammed into a tiny apartment, of Franklin Ortega still working late shifts to stay afloat, of Patrice Nolan breaking down in court as she talked about her kids losing their backyard. Maybe he hadn't asked for this role, but he couldn't walk away now. At the next hearing, crowds filled the courthouse steps. Veterans waved flags. Families held signs. Sylvia arrived in a black sedan, hiding behind sunglasses, but the booze followed her inside. Captain Whitfield presented the findings: fraudulent ledgers, forged fines, coordinated sales. The judge's face hardened as he read. When Sylvia took the stand, her confidence cracked. The emails and memos exposed everything. Quentin watched, not with glee, but with quiet resolve. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. When the judge finally delivered his ruling, the courthouse was packed. "This court," he began, "has reviewed the evidence. The foreclosures carried out under Mrs. Sylvia Brenner's direction were fraudulent, predatory, and illegal." Gasps filled the room. The judge continued, "All property sales tied to these actions are nullified. Titles will be restored to the original owners. Furthermore, Mrs. Brenner and complicit board members are referred to federal prosecutors for charges of fraud, conspiracy, and abuse of power." The gavel struck. Silence, then cheers. Families cried, reporters swarmed, neighbors embraced. Quentin sat still, barely breathing. His ranch, his father's land, was his again. Emma gripped his arm. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," he replied. As Sylvia was escorted out, the crowd roared, some angry, some victorious. She didn't look back. For the first time, she wasn't in control. Outside, Quentin faced the cameras. "I'm not here to celebrate me," he said. "I'm here to celebrate justice." This wasn't about one ranch. It was about every family who was told they didn't matter. "Today proves they do." Applause echoed down the courthouse steps. Veterans saluted. Families hugged. In the weeks that followed, federal charges were filed. Curtis Doyle entered witness protection. The story spread nationwide, sparking debate about HOA corruption and the rights of homeowners. Back at the ranch, Quentin worked the land, mending fences, clearing brush, finding peace again. Strangers came by to thank him or share their stories. He listened always. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Emma joined him on the porch swing. "You've become more than a soldier now," she said softly. "You're a voice for people who never had one." "I never wanted to be a symbol," Quentin said. "Sometimes coming home means fighting for more than yourself." He looked out over the fields, glowing gold in the sunset. The fight had been long and ugly, but justice had come. Families had their homes back. And a message was clear. No one was too small to matter. "Land shows you who people really are," he whispered, remembering his father's words. He finally understood. The headlines faded. Life went on. But Quentin knew the truth. Silence lets injustice grow, and one voice backed by proof can tear it down. So when another veteran called, saying his HOA was threatening foreclosure, Quentin didn't hesitate. He picked up the phone, ready to fight again. Because this wasn't just about one ranch. It was about making sure no soldier, no family, no neighbor ever came home to find their life stolen again. And as he leaned back on that old porch swing, Quentin finally felt peace. He had come home, not just to his land, but to his purpose. If this story moved you, remember to subscribe. Every story has a lesson, and together, we can keep them alive.